Hey guys, last week, so I wanted to kind of do something new, different, or pause ADD moment. Last week we did Genesis chapter 29 and 30. I want to do 30 again, kind of like 30 part two, and it's just about Rachel and Leah. Remember, Jacob has to work for Laban. Let's see, Jacob's mom is Rebecca, Jacob's dad's Isaac. He travels like 650 miles after he steals his brother's blessing to find a wife. Sees Rachel at the well, falls in love with Rachel, meets Laban, her dad, who is his mom's brother, and he's a swindler. But mom was a swindler. Jacob's like trying to break the cycle of being a swindler, but remember he stole his brother's birthright, stole his brother's blessing. So I kind of want to maybe unpack that a little bit more on this rivalry and comparison. So we're gonna get back into Leah and Rachel again. Should be pretty quick, but I got some notes and we're gonna kind of just knock that out before we move on. So I'll start reading again just as a refresher. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister, so she said to Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "Am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children?" Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her." So when we make our spouse kind of an idol or want them to be perfect, we're setting ourselves up for failure, disappointment, and resentment. So Rachel wants to blame Jacob for not having kids, and Jacob's like, "Look, that was on God. Not I'm doing the exact same thing I did with your sister in so many words, right? But because Leah is able to have children and Rachel's not, and so we're just kind of keep going here into comparison. I mean, remember Leah." Jacob married, thought he was marrying Rachel for 7 years of labor with her dad. Wedding night, they're drinking. There's no electricity then. So he slides his oldest daughter, Leah, in. So Leah's the less attractive one. Jacob's really attracted to Rachel. She's got good eyes, likes her curves. I mean, it says that in here. So he's got the hots for her. Waits 7 years, does his labor, does the wedding. And, Laban, who is the OG bloodline of swindlers, slips in his oldest daughter and instead, and then says, "Oh, do the wedding week. I'll give you the second sister, but you got to do another 7 years." So this is like the first and only sister wife thing in the Bible. We know God's trying to give Jacob all kinds of descendants, but all the drama that goes along with this, we can really learn a lot from it. Because we're going to go all the way back to Jacob stole the birthright, the blessing, and then Laban kind of screwed him over on the 7 years of work, and then says, "Oh, well, I'll just throw in the other sister for, 4 easy payments of whatever for another 7 years." And so now he's got to do 14 years while Laban is getting rich and Jacob's now responsible for the two girls. So 2 young girls off the payroll. Jacob's taking care of them while he's building up dad's company. But Jacob, he had to go through Esau to get the blessing. He had to keep Leah and marry Leah to get Rachel. So kind of like the compromise he has to make. But then we get down, to, let's see, chapter 4, or verse 4. So she gave him her servant Bilhah. Jacob slept with her. She became pregnant and bore him a son. Then Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to me, my plea, and given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. So all these names are kind of important. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "I have a great struggle with my sister, and I have won." She named him Naphtali. So the whole time, the sisters are fighting. You know, they come out of like dad's playing favoritism. He likes his pretty daughter, but he uses the older one. You know, one's bait for the other, and he gets rid of both of them in a package. Jacob's still there working for him, but then now one of them is fighting for Jacob's love because Rachel has Jacob's love, and Leah is the only one who is fertile. So she's able to give Jacob sons. So Rachel is jealous of Leah, who gives Jacob sons, but Leah is jealous of Rachel, who has Jacob's love. So the sibling rivalry is a mess from the beginning, and it just takes a toll on everyone. So then they start throwing their servants at each other. So like Rachel gets, you know, her servants are making kids for her. So she's like, look, I got kids now. So then Leah sends her servant Zilpah and starts now she's having more kids. So now it's like, who can have the most kids from Jacob? Nanner, 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 I have his love. Nanner, 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 I bore him sons. Nanner, 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 I had my servant bear him, sons. So then Leah says, well, I'll have my servant bear sons too. So Rachel hasn't had any blood ones yet, but she ends up having them later on in the chapter. Let's see. They take her mandrakes. We talked about that. And then they swapped for the night. And then it backfires. So the whole family is like swindlers. So here's the mandrake one was during the wheat harvest. Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. So Reuben is Leah's son. Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes. Remember, mandrakes were like an aphrodisiac. They're supposed to help you with fertility. So this is to make kids. She said, but she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? The sibling rivalry is crazy already. And then, so she says, very well, Rachel said, he can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So Rachel thinks she's getting some aphrodisiac, something that's going to make her pregnant. But she's got to trade Jacob for one night. In return, that one night, Jacob gets Leah pregnant again. It backfires. And so I say all this to say Rachel is constantly comparing to Leah. Leah's comparing to Rachel, and how we don't want to take that into our lives. We don't want to compare our marriage to other marriages, my wife versus someone else's wife, because everybody's stuff's different. Everything they're going through. Even the sibling rivalry thing, we don't want to tell one kid to be like another one or compare our kids, because we're all God's kids. Under our roof, they're our kids, our children, and that's it. Each kid is better at one thing than another, whether it's talent, looks, heart, whatever it may be. But that's the way God made them. But not in this. These guys are fighting. They're rivalrous. They're comparing. And so, the only time I guess it's really good to compare ourselves to other people is when we want to learn from them. It's like, oh, I saw that person do it that way. I like that, But when it's like, that family remodeled their house, now your wife wants the house remodeled, or that person got a job or bought this, and now there's this constantly keeping up with the Joneses thing, and the sisters are doing that, the dad does that. Remember, he got mad when Jacob was like kind of breeding the cattle, but he outsmarted him on some of the goats, sheep, cattle, what he was doing. So he kept he always tried to manipulate it. But if you give it to God, you don't have to compare or manipulate. But everyone is just jealous all the way through here. It's just all over them. And we feel sorry for Leah, this is essentially the woman that no man loved. Her dad didn't want her, had to sneak her in on her sister's wedding night. Jacob didn't want her. He wanted the sister, but traditionally the older sister got given away first. So now he's got to have the older one to get the younger one. A lot of problems through all this. And so we see in Scripture, my notes say, when we make our spouse an idol, then we resent him. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Don't worry about what somebody else is doing. If God gave you the this one got the spouse's love and the other got fertility. So don't want what your spouse or your sibling has or your neighbors had. Don't worry about that. Know that God gave it to you, and if you need something else, you can ask God for it. Verse 6, Proverbs 3, verse 6, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. It's God's plan. So, if you can't get pregnant at the time, if you are something at your job isn't happening, remember this is God's plan, and we always need to put our trust in the Lord. For whether it's for love, understanding, we can get all that from God. So then the comparison, let's see. So in my notes I have Rachel's constantly comparing herself to her sister, and her sister's comparing herself to her. Rachel lost sight of what she had, her husband's love. So Rachel has her husband's love. And then Leah lost sight of what God gave her, which is fertility. So one wants what the other one has, and the other one wants what this one has, but neither one of them were happy with what God gave them. And I think we see ourselves a lot in that. Social media makes it crazy, right? Like, oh, look what this person got, that person. How come I don't have that? Be happy with what God gave you, because that's your blessing. If one had the husband's love, the other one had fertility. Psalms 139 verse 14 says, I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it well. So thank you, Lord, for what you made us exactly to be. You out there, whoever you are, is exactly who God made you to be. So don't quit being that person, and don't try to want or need something else, because God gives you what you need. Just because the want is going to get you in more trouble, because God gives you what you need. 2 Corinthians 10:12, it's a great one. We do not dare to classify or compare ourselves. Remember, don't compare yourselves to other people. It's bad. We do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. So some people love themselves. We don't need to try to be like people that love themselves, all right? It seems like we want to, but yes, love yourself, but not in this cocky, boisterous thing. Like, you don't even want to be like that. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. Right. So we're not going to do that. And so my notes here, I say rivalry is comparison with Leah and Rachel was so strong that it inspired the names of their children. This is true. Let's see. And there's already this toxicity carrying over from the sibling rivalry with the kids. So, for example, Reuben slept with one of his father's secondary wives. So we're going to get to this in a little bit in the next couple chapters. Reuben sleeps with one of his dad's second wives. 9 of the kids tried to kill their other brother out of jealousy. And 2 of the unforgiving brothers killed all the men in a city. That's coming up. So there's already, it came from Laban and his 2 daughters, loving one or the other, or, and because he just used them like pawns. And then Laban's sister Rachel, who's Jacob's mom, they were playing favoritism, but Isaac was playing favoritism. And so now you have this whole group of kids in this polygamy house that they're all like this because the moms hate each other. So if the mom drama carries over to the kid drama, don't do that. That is just toxic all in itself. Let's see. So he sleeps with secondary wives. We don't want to do that. So Jacob's parents played favoritism. Laban said, so yeah, how did Leah feel? Her dad dumped her. But the whole time Jacob's kind of like struggling with this with God. He's becoming who he wants to be. He doesn't want to be this swindler anymore that he grew up in the house of. And then now he's really seen it with Laban. I think he's had this whole look, this is where God put me. This is what I have to do. And that's why we see him leave. But the whole time, he's trying to break the generational curse. And that's really what I wanted to get across to everyone. Comparing ourselves to others is already a curse within itself. But he's trying to be victorious over these generational curses from his parents to now him and then kids. Because in our lives, addiction can carry over and carry over and carry over. You see this a lot in our town and the bad side of towns. there's a lot of things that affect it, but essentially there's a lot of dirtbag parents with dirtbag kids. So don't be either one of those, right? It's hard to break that. We need Christ to break that cycle, because addiction, divorce a big one. My parents were divorced. My parents' were divorced on like both sides, every side. My wife's parents were divorced. It is such a hard curse to break. So remember, when in our battles within ourself, our victories or our defeats are going to carry over into our children and our grandchildren. So never give up. Always be try to stay on God's path, because God's path is going to help us be victorious. Because when we leave it up to ourselves, we end up manipulating situations like Jacob and Laban, and women fighting and kids trying to kill each other and all that stuff. And so the only way to break these generational curses is through Christ. And it is hard, and it is hard work, but that's what God's here for us for. And then kind of in the end, I found here in a few chapters, or in a few books, we're going to get to Leviticus 18. It's in the Moses time. And it says, do not take your wife's sister as a rival wife and have sexual relations with her while your wife is living. So it doesn't take long before this stuff is like a law, timeout, no more. So Jacob got a lot of his descendants, like God promised him. But in the end, like multi-wives, multi-relationships, we are made to have one husband, one wife, and nothing else, because it's a train wreck and it just makes more generational curses instead of less. So, 99 problems, and apparently Leah and Rachel were one. So anyway, I wanted to kind of buzz through that. Know that God loves you guys, no matter what it is, and we don't need to compare ourselves to anyone else, because we're exactly who God made us to be, and know that he meets our needs. And if he doesn't meet our wants, maybe there's for a good reason. So love you guys. We'll pick up again on chapter 31 next week, because Jacob's about to jam from his father-in-law, and it's going to get funky there too. Love you. Have a great week.